My daughter-in-law took the gift I gave my son and said, "Cheap trash," and threw it on the floor right there at Christmas dinner. Her mother laughed and looked at me with contempt. I didn't say a word. I just withdrew my investment, arranged for the BMW to be picked up, and told him, "From now on, you are on your own." She went pale instantly. It was 9:00 p.m. on December 24th. My house in Denver smelled of hot cider and freshly baked turkey. There were 22 people seated around that table that I myself had decorated for 3 full days. Gold lights, poinsettias, embroidered tablecloths that I inherited from my mother. And in the midst of all that effort, all that silly hope I still held in my chest, my daughter-in-law took my grandfather's watch, that pocket watch that had survived 4 generations of my family, and tossed it on the floor as if it were an empty wrapper. "This," said Valerie, holding the blue velvet box between 2 fingers as if it burned her. "Seriously, Elizabeth, a scratched old watch." Her voice cut through the air. The conversation stopped. Someone dropped a fork. "It's cheap trash." Those 2 words came out of her mouth so naturally that it took me seconds to process what she had said. Then came the gesture. She took the watch, lifted it for everyone to see, and let it fall. The sound was dull, final. I looked at my son. Matthew was sitting next to her with his eyes glued to his plate. He didn't look up. He didn't say a word. His hands trembled slightly, but he did nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then I heard the laughter. Grace, Valerie's mother, covered her mouth with one hand, but she couldn't contain the burst of laughter. She looked at me from across the table with those small eyes full of mockery. "Oh, Elizabeth," she said through her laughter. "Louie's so dramatic. Couldn't you buy something decent for your son? Something actually worthwhile?" I felt the blood rush to my head. The air become thick as every pair of eyes at that table watched me, waiting for my reaction. My sister Olivia stood up immediately. "That is enough. Who do you think you are, too? This is a family matter, Olivia." Valerie interrupted coldly. "Don't get involved where you're not wanted." The silence that followed was worse than any scream. I knelt down slowly. I picked the watch up off the floor. The crystal was broken, the face intact but full of dust. I wiped it with the napkin on my lap and put it in the pocket of my dress. Then I stood up. I didn't tremble, I didn't cry. Something inside me had broken too, but in a different, definitive way. I took my phone out of the purse hanging on the back of my chair. Everyone was looking at me. Valerie was smiling smugly. Matthew still hadn't looked up. I dialed the first number. "Good evening, mister." "Salazar," I said in a quiet voice. "I'm sorry to call on Christmas Eve. I need you to recover a vehicle, a BMW 5 Series license plate, XYZ923K, tonight." "Yes, now." Valerie's smile began to fade. I dialed the second number. "Roger, it's Elizabeth Mononto." "Yes, Merry Christmas to you too. I need you to remove Matthew Montero from all corporate accounts immediately." "No, it's not a mistake. Do it now." Valerie stood up. "Wait, what are you doing?" I didn't answer her. I dialed the third number. "Telephone banking. Good evening. I need to freeze 2 credit cards in my name ending in 4156 and 8923. "Yes, I'm sure. Mom." Matthew finally spoke. "You're overreacting." Valerie was just... I looked at him. I really looked at him, and I didn't recognize the man in front of me. "You had 38 seconds. I told him 38 seconds while your wife trampled on the memory of your great-grandfather, of my grandfather, of the man who taught me everything I know. And you didn't say anything." My voice didn't rise in volume. It didn't need to. "Valerie, Matthew!" I looked at both of them. "From this moment on, you are on your own." Valerie let out a nervous laugh. "What does that mean? Are you going to kick us out? This is your house, right? We live here too. You can stay as long as you want," I replied. But you won't receive $1 more from me. I walked over to where Roderick, my lawyer, was sitting next to my sister. I touched his shoulder. "Rodri, are you free tomorrow morning?" He nodded, understanding immediately. "I need to update my will." Valerie's face lost all color, and there, in that perfect instant of absolute silence, I knew I had made the best decision of my life. But to understand how I got to that point, to understand why that watch represented my red line, I have to tell you the whole story from the beginning. If this story touched something in your heart, stick around until the end because what comes next is going to leave you speechless. And if you want to keep hearing real stories like this, subscribe to the channel. My name is Elizabeth Montero, and I am 67 years old. I was not born rich. I didn't inherit anything easily. Every dollar I have in the bank carries the weight of my cracked hands and my sleepless nights. I grew up in Phoenix in a small house behind a hardware store that smelled eternally of fresh paint and machine oil. My grandfather Nest was the owner, a man with enormous hands and few words who taught me more with his actions than with his advice. "Elizabeth," he would say to me while I helped him organize screws and wooden drawers, "honest work will never make you rich overnight, but it will give you something that easy money can never buy: dignity." That watch that Valerie destroyed in my dining room was his. His father gave it to him when he opened his first hardware store in 1952. He wore it every day of his life until he died and handed it to me when I was 17. "You have an eye for numbers, honey," he told me on his deathbed. "Take care of this business when I'm gone." And I did. I married Robert Montero when I was 23. He was a good man, hardworking, shy, but consistent. We took over the hardware store together, and for 18 years we built something solid, not spectacular, but sufficient. We had one son, Matthew, my only child. Robert died when Matthew was 14, a sudden heart attack while he was unloading bags of cement on a Tuesday afternoon. He didn't even make it to the hospital. I was left alone with a teenager, a hardware store that was sinking in debt, and a hole in my chest that I thought would never close. For 6 months, I didn't know if we would survive. Suppliers were demanding past due payments. Customers were going to the bigger stores. Matthew cried every night, asking for his dad. One morning, sitting in the hardware store office surrounded by unpaid bills, I took out my grandfather's watch. I opened it. Inside, he had engraved something I had never paid attention to. "Courage is in continuing when everyone else gives up." I closed the account books. I dried my tears. And I got to work. I renegotiated every debt. I looked for new suppliers. I learned to carry heavy bags myself when there was no money for employees. Matthew helped me after school, dispensing nails and organizing inventory. "We're a team, Mom," he would tell me with that smile he inherited from his father. "It took us 3 years. She used to get out of the hole, but we did it." By the time Matthew turned 25, we no longer had one hardware store. We had 3. One downtown Phoenix, another in Scottsdale, and the third in Mesa. We employed 42 people. We were generating $6 million a year, all built with hard work, with early mornings, with difficult decisions and sacrifices that no one sees. I never remarried. I never had the time or the inclination. My entire life revolved around 2 things: my hardware stores and my son. Matthew studied business administration. He was smart, responsible, and caring. We saw each other every Sunday without fail. We had pancakes and bacon at my house and then reviewed the business numbers together. "One day, all of this will be yours, son," I would tell him as I turned the balance sheets. "I don't want it to be mine, Mom," he would reply. "I want it to be ours always." Those words, she filled my heart. I thought nothing could break what we had built together. I believed a son's love was unbreakable. But then she arrived. Valerie Sanderl appeared in our lives 4 years ago at a construction materials exhibition at the Phoenix Convention Center. Matthew was 33. She was 29. Tall, thin, straight, dark hair always perfectly styled, expensive clothes, impeccable nails, a practiced smile. She introduced herself as a brand consultant for family businesses. She had elegant business cards and a social media profile full of photos in luxurious restaurants, trips to Maui beaches, and designer bags. Lifestyle influencer, she called herself. 180,000 followers. Matthew was fascinated. I felt something cold run down my back from the first moment I saw her look at me. Her eyes evaluated me up and down in 3 seconds, calculating, measuring, cataloging. She didn't like me, and I didn't trust her either. But my son was in love, or at least that's what he thought. And what I didn't know at that moment was that Valerie had not arrived in our lives by chance. She had arrived with a plan. The first 3 months were a perfect performance. Valerie was charming. She smiled at the right moment. She asked questions about the hardware stores with apparent genuine interest. She called me Mrs. Elizabeth, with a tone of respect that I now know was pure theater. "Your son speaks wonders of you," she would say while we had coffee in my living room. "You must be very proud of everything you've accomplished." And I, like a fool, softened. Matthew brought her home every weekend. We had dinner together. She praised my food, although I noticed she barely took a bite. She always had some trendy diet. She always had an excuse. But there were things that didn't add up. One afternoon, Matthew casually mentioned that Valerie lived in an apartment in Beverly Hills, one of the most exclusive areas in Phoenix. Rent $45,000 a month. "And what exactly does she live on?" I asked him that night after she left. "From her social media, Mom, she has sponsorships. Collaborations with brands. Brands of what? Clothes, cosmetics, restaurants? I don't know exactly." That vagueness bothered me, so I did what any mother would do. I investigated. Her Instagram profile was impeccable. Professional photos, captions in English and Spanish, tags for 5-star hotels, and very expensive boutiques. But when I looked closely, something didn't quite fit. The comments were generic. The likes seemed real, but the genuine interactions were scarce. And above all, none of the brands that supposedly sponsored her mentioned her on their own accounts. I asked my niece, Danielle, who works in digital marketing. "Aunt," she told me after reviewing the profile, "this smells like bot followers. Look at the growth patterns. And these photos in hotels, I bet they are day visits or free trials. This does not generate the money she claims. I couldn't sleep that night." The next day, I invited Valerie to lunch, just the two of us. "Tell me about your family," I said, while we shared some tacos at a place near the hardware store. Her face tensed for a fraction of a second before recovering her smile. "My mom lives in Houston. She's a widow like you. My dad died 6 years ago." "And what does she do?" She's retired. She has her pension." "Siblings?" "No, I'm an only child." "And what did you study?" Another barely noticeable pause. "Communications at Houston University." Everything sounded correct, but there was something in the way she answered, as if she were reciting a learned script. "Valerie," I said with all the warmth I could fake, "I know Matthew is very excited about you, and I just want him to be happy." She nodded with those eyes that didn't smile, even though her mouth did. "But I also want you to know something." I leaned forward slightly. "My son is everything I have, and I have worked my entire life to give him a future. So I need to be sure that whoever is by his side loves him for who he is, not for what he has." Her expression changed, just for an instant. A flash of something cold and calculating crossed her gaze. Then she let out a soft, almost sad laugh. "But Elizabeth, I understand your concern." "Really, but I promise you that I love Matthew. I'm not interested in his money." Liar. I knew it at that moment, but I didn't have proof, only intuition. That night, I spoke with Matthew. "Son, I think you should slow down. You barely know her." His reaction surprised me. "Why do you always do this, Mom?" His voice sounded tired, frustrated. "You're never satisfied with anyone. No girlfriend of mine has ever been enough for you." "That's not true." "Yes, it is. Laura wasn't educated enough. Patricia was too quiet. And now Valerie, what is she? Too pretty, too successful. It's not that, it's just that something doesn't feel right." "Something," he repeated bitterly. "Something you can't explain. Just a feeling. Mothers just know." "No, Mom. Mothers are overprotective. I'm 33 years old. I'm not a kid anymore." Those words hurt me more than I expected. "I just want you to be happy. Then let me live my life." He left my house, slamming the door. We didn't speak for a week, the longest week of my life. When he finally called me, I heard something different in his voice, something new. "Mom, I need to tell you something." My heart stopped. I proposed to Valerie and she said, yes. The world tilted beneath my feet. "When?" "Last night. I want you to be the first to know." I should have screamed. I should have begged him to wait. But his voice sounded so happy, so excited. "Congratulations, son," I murmured. "If she makes you happy, then she makes me happy." Another lie. But this time, I said it out of love. That night, sitting in my empty kitchen, I held my grandfather's watch in my hands. "I don't know what to do," I whispered into the air. "I don't know how to protect him without losing him." But it was already too late. Valerie had won the first battle, and I didn't even know we were at war. Because what came next would teach me that my worst suspicions fell short. The wedding was set for 6 months later, 6 months that Valerie used to transform herself into the perfect bride. She posted photos of her and Matthew with mushy captions. "The love of my life, my forever future." Every image calculated to the millimeter. Her followers went wild. The comments multiplied, and she responded to each one with that false sweetness that already made me sick. But what happened away from the cameras was another story. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I need to speak with you," she said to me one Saturday morning, showing up at my house unannounced. She brought a thick folder, opened it on my dining room table, and began pulling out papers. "I've been looking at options for wedding venues. Matthew and I want something elegant, intimate, special." She showed me photos of an estate on the outskirts of Phoenix. Impeccable gardens, fountains, ballrooms with crystal chandeliers. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "The full package costs $850,000. My breath caught. 800? It includes everything. Banquet for 200 guests, premium open bar, decoration, live music, 5-tier cake. She spoke as if reading a menu. "Matthew says you wanted to help with the expenses." Yes, of course I want to contribute, but that amount, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, Mrs. Elizabeth. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Besides, you have 3 successful hardware stores. I know you can afford it." There it was, the first direct hit. She didn't ask. She didn't suggest. She assumed. "Let me discuss it with Matthew," I said, trying to maintain my composure. "We already discussed it. He agrees. We just need you to confirm." I felt cornered in my own house. In the end, I agreed because refusing meant being the stingy mother-in-law who ruined her only son's wedding. $850,000, almost everything I had saved that year. The wedding was exactly as Valerie planned it. Perfect for Instagram. Cold in person. I sat in the front row wearing a dress I bought especially for the occasion, watching my son marry a woman who I knew deep down in my soul did not love him. During the waltz, Matthew searched for me with his gaze and smiled, a genuine, happy smile, and I smiled back, swallowing all my doubts. Because that's what mothers do. They smile even when they are breaking inside. The honeymoon was to Maui. 2 weeks, all paid for by me. Although that was never mentioned in the photos Valerie uploaded to her social media. When they returned, I expected them to look for their own place, an apartment, a house, their own space. Instead, one afternoon, Matthew arrived with 2 suitcases. "Mom, can we stay with you while we look for something?" Valerie was behind him, smiling. "It'll only be a few months," she added. "The housing market is so expensive right now. We need time to find something worthwhile." What was I supposed to say? No. Of course, son. This will always be your home. The months turned into a year, then 2, and staying temporarily turned into a permanent occupation. Valerie began to change things. First, it was small details. A new vase here, different cushions there. To modernize a little. "Mrs. Elizabeth, with all due respect, but your decor is very traditional." Then there were bigger things. She wanted to paint the living room gray instead of the beige I had chosen. "It's more elegant, more contemporary." One day, I came home from work and the photo of my wedding to Robert, which had been on the living room wall for 25 years, was gone. "Where is my photo?" I asked, trying to keep calm. "I put it away in your room, Mrs. Elizabeth. It makes the living room look like a museum. We need more neutral spaces." Museum. She called my history a museum. Matthew was there hearing everything. He didn't say anything. "That photo goes back in its place," I said firmly. Valerie sighed dramatically. "As you wish." But the damage was done. The message was clear. This was no longer my house. It was hers. And then Grace arrived. Valerie's mother showed up on a Thursday afternoon with 3 large suitcases. Mom had problems with her landlord in Houston. Valerie explained, "She was evicted. She needs to stay with us for a while." They didn't even ask me. Grace was a woman of 58, round, with a high-pitched voice and constant opinions. She settled into the guest room as if it were a hotel. She never offered to help with anything. She didn't cook. She didn't clean. She spent her time watching soap operas and criticizing everything I did. "Oh, Elizabeth, are you still using that blender? It's so old." "Elizabeth, you should change those curtains. They look like they're from the 80s. "Why don't you hire someone to help you with the yard? It looks neglected." And Valerie backed her up on everything. They laughed together. They whispered quietly when I walked by. They looked at me as if I were the intruder in my own house. Matthew worked at the hardware stores, but we no longer had those Sunday breakfasts. We no longer reviewed the business numbers together. "I'm tired, Mom. Valerie and I want to rest on the weekends, rest with my money in my house." Because even though Matthew still had a salary from the hardware stores, $45,000 a month, that money disappeared like water through his hands. One day, I checked the corporate accounts. Matthew had access to a corporate card for business-related expenses. The latest movements sent a chill down my spine. Very expensive restaurants, clothing boutiques, a jewelry store at the Grove, $120,000 on a bracelet. I confronted him that night. "Matthew, what is this?" "These are gifts for Valerie with the company card. Mom, we're married. What's mine is hers too. But this is not yours. It belongs to the company. It belongs to the hardware stores we built together." Valerie walked into the living room at that moment. "What's the problem, Mrs. Elizabeth? You don't want your son to give things to his wife. The problem is that she interrupted me, "is that you treat Matthew as if he were still a child, as if he needed your permission for everything." Tears instantly welled up in her eyes, a talent she mastered perfectly. "I just want you to accept me, to trust me, but you always see me as an enemy." Matthew immediately hugged her. "There, honey, calm down." And then he looked at me with reproach. "Mom, you need to stop controlling everything." That night, I cried in my room in silence so no one would hear me because I was losing my son. And the worst thing was that he didn't even realize it. The change was so gradual that I almost didn't notice it. Like when you boil a frog alive. If you turn up the heat suddenly, it jumps out. But if you increase it degree by degree, it stays there until it's too late. That's how I lost Matthew. Sundays had been sacred for 33 years. Since he was a child, we had breakfast together. Ranch-style eggs, sweet rolls, hot coffee brewed the traditional way. We talked about everything, about life, about the business, about his dreams. But after the wedding, those Sundays began to be canceled. Mom, Valerie isn't feeling well. Maybe another day. Mom, we have plans with Valerie's friends. Mom, we need time for ourselves as a couple. At first, I understood. They're newlyweds. I thought it's normal, but another day never came. The calls also changed. Before, Matthew called me every day just to say hello, to ask me how my day had been. Now, if I didn't call, days would pass without talking. And when I did, the conversations were short, cold. Everything okay, son? Yes, Mom. Just busy. Busy doing what? We can see each other for a talk to you later. I have to hang up. Click. One Saturday. My dear friend Linda invited me out to lunch. We went to a restaurant downtown. And while we waited for our food, she put her hand on mine. Elizabeth, what's going on between you and Matthew? Why do you ask? I saw him last week at the grocery store with Valerie and her mom. I spoke to them. I said, hello. Matthew barely looked at me. And when I mentioned your name, Valerie immediately changed the subject. I felt a lump in my throat. They're very busy, I guess. No, Elizabeth. This is something else. Something's not right. That same night, I decided to do something I had never done. Review Valerie's social media more carefully. There were recent photos of family gathering in my own house, a dinner party with friends, a movie afternoon in the living room. I was not in any of them, literally. In my house at events organized under my roof, and I didn't appear in a single image. I kept checking. I found a whole album titled Family. Valerie with Matthew. Valerie with Grace. Valerie with cousins I didn't even know. Valerie with their friends. Not a single picture of me. It was as if I didn't exist. I decided to talk to Matthew face to face without Valerie present. I waited for him one afternoon outside the Scottsdale hardware store. When he came out and saw me, his expression wasn't joy. It was annoyance. Mom, what are you doing here? I need to talk to you alone. He sighed. Fine, but make it fast because I'm supposed to pick up Valerie. We went to a nearby coffee shop. I ordered 2 coffees that neither of us touched. Matthew, I feel like I'm losing you. Don't start, Mom. Let me finish, please. My voice broke. We don't talk anymore. We don't see each other anymore. And when we are together, I feel like you're miles away. It's because you don't make it easy. I don't. What did I do? You constantly make Valerie feel bad with your comments, with your looks, with your attitude. What comments? What attitude? She tells me everything. Mom, how you correct her, how you criticize everything she does, how you make her feel that she is not enough for me. I was speechless because none of that was true. Matthew, I would never. I know it's hard for you, okay? I know that for years it was just you and me, but I'm grown up now. I have my own family now, and I need you to respect that. Your own family? I repeated, feeling the words. Cut me. And what am I? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He ran his hands through his hair, frustrated. You meant that I'm no longer a part of your life, that Valerie is your priority. And I'm just the woman who lives in the same house, the one who pays the bills, the one who keeps the business running while you spend on luxuries. Now you're overreacting. Overreacting, Matthew? I've covered over $1 million in expenses that aren't mine. The BMW, the clothes, the trips, the restaurants, the jewelry. I pay for everything while Valerie shows off a life on social media that she doesn't pay for herself. His jaw tensed. It's not all about money, Mom. You're right. It's not about money. It's about respect. It's about valuing what you have. It's about... My phone vibrated. A message from my trusted employee rose. Mrs. Elizabeth, did you authorize Valerie to use the company truck to go shopping? I felt my blood boil. I showed the message to Matthew. Did you give her access to the vehicles too? She's my wife. What's wrong with that? They are not yours to give away, Matthew. They belong to the company. You are impossible. He got up from the table. I can't talk to you when you're like this. Like what? Defending what I built with my own hands. Controlling, manipulating, making everyone feel guilty. Those words went through me like bullets. I have to go. And he left. I stayed seated in that empty coffee shop, watching my coffee get cold, feeling everything I had built crumble. 2 weeks later, I discovered something worse. Danielle, my niece, sent me screenshots. Valerie's Instagram stories that were only visible to close friends. In one of them, she was in my living room with Grace and 2 of her friends, wine glasses in hand. The text read, "When your mother-in-law goes to work and you can finally breathe." The comments were worse. "Oh, girl, the patience you have. Just kick her out of her own house. Haha. Tell her to go to a nursing home. She's served her time." And Valerie had reacted with laughing emojis to every comment. I cried so much that night that I thought I was going to be dehydrated. But the worst was yet to come. One afternoon, I got home early. I had closed an important sale and wanted to share the news with Matthew. I thought maybe we could reconnect. When I walked in, I heard voices in the kitchen. Valerie was on a video call. She had the speakerphone on. "I can't take it anymore here, I swear," she said in a tired voice. "It's unbearable. All the time watching, all the time with her comments." "And what does Matthew say?" asked the voice on the other end. "Matthew does what I tell him. I've almost convinced him. In a few months, all of this will be ours. We just have to wait a little longer." "And what if she leaves you out of the will?" Valerie let out a laugh. She's not going to leave her only son with nothing. And when Matthew inherits, I inherit. That's how it works. I was paralyzed in the hallway. Everything clicked at that moment. Every detail, every manipulation, every fake tear. She never loved me. She never loved Matthew. She only wanted what she could get from us. I backed away silently. I left the house. I got into my car and drove aimlessly for hours. When I finally returned, it was already night. Valerie and Grace were in the living room watching television, as if nothing had happened. "Good evening, Mrs. Elizabeth," Valerie said with that perfect smile. I smiled back because I had learned something from her. I could act too. And as I headed to my room, an idea began to form in my mind. If she could play, so could I. But my rules were going to be very different. November arrived with unusual cold for Phoenix. I kept smiling. I kept being friendly. I kept behaving like the naive mother-in-law Valerie thought I was. But inside, something had changed. I was no longer the woman begging for attention. I was no longer the desperate mother trying to win back her son. I was a businesswoman who had survived the death of her husband, debts, abusive suppliers, 30 years in Sears in a male-dominated market. And if life had taught me anything, it was this. Never underestimate a woman who has nothing left to lose. I began to document everything. Every unjustified expense, every improper use of company resources, every credit card, every invoice, every bank transfer. I asked my accountant, Roger, to prepare a detailed report of the last 3 years for me, confidential, for my eyes only. When he handed me the folder, I had to sit down. $1,700,000. That was the exact amount I had covered since Valerie entered our lives. The wedding, $850,000. The BMW that Matthew drove, but that Valerie used as her own. Monthly payments totaling $320,000. Credit cards, $410,000. Clothes, restaurants, trips, jewelry, spas, beauty salons, the rest. And Matthew had no idea of the real magnitude. Because Valerie managed his money, she reviewed his bank statements. She controlled every dollar that came in. To better manage our expenses, she had told him. How convenient. One night, while reviewing those numbers in my office, my sister Olivia called me. "Elizabeth, are you okay? You seem strange lately." "I'm fine, liar. I've known you since you were born. What's going on?" And then for the first time in months, I broke down. I told her everything, the manipulation, the isolation, the conversation I heard, the numbers I had just discovered. Olivia was silent for a moment. "And what are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but something has to change." "Well, I support you in whatever you do, but be careful, sister. That woman is dangerous." "I know. That's why I have to be smarter than her." December arrived, and with it, the social pressure of the holidays. Valerie began talking about Christmas dinner weeks in advance. "This year, we should do something big, Mrs. Elizabeth. Invite the whole family, my friends too. It would be perfect for my social media." Of course, her social media. "Sounds good to me," I said calmly. "I'll take care of everything." Her surprise was evident. She expected resistance. "Really? Of course, it will be my Christmas gift to you." The following days, I dedicated myself to planning. I hired a catering service. I bought decorations, Christmas lights, a huge tree that reached the ceiling of the living room. I spent $38,000 on that dinner. Valerie supervised everything with a critical eye. "These flowers are too simple, Mrs. Elizabeth. You should put white roses. The table looks very traditional. It needs a more modern centerpiece. Aren't you going to get a professional photographer?" "All my friends will want photos." I nodded at everything. I smiled. I indulged. Grace also had opinions. "Oh, Elizabeth, that tablecloth is very old. Don't you have something more elegant? Are you going to make that dry turkey you made last year?" "You should order one from one of those fancy restaurants." I ignored them. I continued with my plans. But there was something more important than the dinner. The gift. I had thought a lot about what to give Matthew. I needed to do something meaningful, something that communicated everything I couldn't say with words. One afternoon, I opened the safe in my room. There, wrapped in navy blue velvet, was my grandfather's watch. I had put it away after Robert's death. It was too painful to look at. Too many memories. I took it out carefully. I cleaned it with a soft cloth. The metal shone under the light. On the back, there was still the inscription that my great-grandfather had engraved in 1952. "Courage is in continuing when everyone else gives up." I opened the watch. Inside, my grandfather had pasted a tiny photo, him and my grandmother, the day they opened the first hardware store. Young, smiling, full of hope. I ran my finger over the crystal, and tears fell without permission. This watch had witnessed 4 generations of honest work, of early mornings, of sacrifices, of dignity, and now I would hand it over to the 5th generation to my son as a symbol of forgiveness, of continuity, of faith that I could still recover him. I bought a new box made of walnut wood with brass hinges. I had the interior lined with wine-colored silk, and I wrote a letter. "Matthew, this watch belonged to your great-grandfather Nest, then to your grandfather, then to me. And now it belongs to you. Every scratch on its surface tells a story. Every mark is a day of work. Every second it marks is a heartbeat of our family. I give it to you not because it is valuable in money. I give it to you because you are the continuation of everything they built. You are my pride. You are my legacy. And no matter what happens, you will always be my son. With all my love, Mom." I folded the letter and placed it inside the box next to the watch. The night of December 23rd. Couldn't sleep. Something in my chest told me that something was going to go wrong. A hunch. A premonition. I got up at 3 a.m. and walked through the house in silence. Everything was ready. The table set, the lights on, the gifts under the tree. I stopped in front of a family photo that was still hanging in the hallway. Matthew was 12 years old. Robert was hugging me around the waist. The 3 of us were smiling. "Give me strength," I whispered. "Because I think everything is going to change tomorrow." I didn't know how right I was. The morning of the 24th arrived cold and cloudy. Valerie came down for breakfast in a tight red dress, heels, perfect makeup. At 9 a.m. ing to be epic today, she said while taking a photo in front of the tree. I can feel it. Grace appeared behind her, laughing at something on her phone. Matthew came down last. He looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, son. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him so many things, but I just smiled. Ready for tonight? He vaguely nodded. And as I watched the three of them laughing in the living room, detached from them as always, I held the box with the watch in my hands. I didn't know that in a few hours that piece of metal and memories was going to become the line that would separate my life into a before and an after. That tonight, everything I had silently endured was going to explode. That I was finally going to defend myself, and that when I did, there would be no turning back. The guests began to arrive at 7 p.m. My sister Olivia was the first. She brought her husband Richard and my nieces Danielle and Carmen. She hugged me tightly at the door. Are you sure about this? She whispered in my ear. There's no turning back now, I replied. My cousins arrived, my friends, close family friends, business acquaintances. In total, 22 people filled my house with laughter and hugs. Valerie was in her element. She posed for photos. She hugged every guest as if they were lifelong friends, even though she barely knew some of them. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications. I'm uploading everything live, she told one of her influencer friends, who she had also invited. My followers are going crazy over the decor. Grace walked around the living room with a glass of wine, commenting on everything. Oh, but this turned out so nice, although I would have put the lights up differently. More modern, right? I took a deep breath. I smiled. I served drinks. At 8 p.m., we sat down to dinner. The table was beautiful, I have to admit. White porcelain plates, silver cutlery, crystal glasses that reflected the lights of the tree. The turkey in the center, golden and steaming. Matthew sat to my right, Valerie next to him, Grace across from me, because of course she had claimed that seat. Before we started, I said, raising my glass, I want to thank everyone for being here. Family is the most important thing we have, and tonight we celebrate that. Cheers, everyone said in unison. Valerie looked at me. There was something strange in her expression, as if she was evaluating me. Dinner went on normally. Crossed conversations, laughter, Christmas music in the background, but I barely ate a bite. My stomach was knotted. My hands were sweating under the napkin on my lap because I knew what was coming. At 9:30, after dessert, Valerie tapped her glass with a spoon. It's gift time, she announced enthusiastically. I want to start. She got up and pulled several boxes wrapped in gold paper from under the tree. This is for you, Mrs. Elizabeth, she said, handing me one. I opened it. It was an apron with the phrase, "World's Best Mother-in-Law." The laughter was uncomfortable. Olivia looked at me with narrowed eyes. Thank you, I said, putting it aside. Valerie handed out more gifts. For Matthew, an Italian leather wallet. For Grace, an expensive perfume. For her friends, name-brand cosmetics, all bought with money she hadn't earned. Then it was my turn. I had bought gifts for everyone. Cashmere scarves, silk ties, fine wines, simple but elegant jewelry. When Valerie opened her gift, a Cartier bracelet that cost $95,000, her reaction was lukewarm. Oh, thanks. I guess it's nice. She didn't even put it on. Grace opened her $18,000 scarf, looked at it briefly, and left it on the table without even taking it out of the packaging. How thoughtful, she mumbled without emotion. I felt the first sting of anger, but I swallowed it. Finally, I took out the walnut box. The whole room fell silent when I placed it in front of Matthew. This is for you, son. He took it carefully. His fingers traced the polished wood. Mom, the box is beautiful. Open it. He did it slowly. First, he took out the letter. He read it in silence. I saw how his eyes got moist. Then he took out the watch. Mom, his voice broke. Is it Great-Grandpa Nest's watch? It was his, my grandfather's and my father's. Now it is yours. I explained the story. Every generation that had worn it, every sacrifice it represented, every early morning, every difficult decision. This watch saw the hardware stores start, saw your father grow up, saw you being born. And I want you to use it remembering where you came from, remembering that everything we have was built with work and dignity. Matthew held the watch with both hands. Tears ran down his cheeks. It's the best gift you've ever given me, Mom. He stood up to hug me, and then Valerie spoke. Can I see it? Matthew, still emotional, passed it to her. Valerie took it. She examined it, turning it over. She frowned. Is this a Rolex? An Omega? No, I replied. It's a Longines from 1952. They don't make that model anymore. And how much is it worth? The question hit me like a slap. It's not about how much it's worth, Valerie. It's about, well, it looks very old and it has scratches all over it. She lifted it for everyone to see. I mean, it's nice for a museum, I guess. But as a Christmas gift, the air thickened. What are you saying? Matthew asked softly. Valerie let out an uncomfortable laugh. Don't get me wrong, honey. I know it has sentimental value, but seriously. She looked directly at me. Seriously, Mrs. Elizabeth, an old scratched watch, is that the best you can give? Valerie, Matthew warned, but she didn't stop. I mean, you have 3 successful hardware stores, money to buy me a Cartier bracelet. But for your only son, you give him cheap trash. Cheap trash. Those words came out of her mouth and floated in the air like poison. I felt every pair of eyes at that table fixed on us. That watch, I said with a trembling voice, has more history than anything you've ever owned in your life. History doesn't pay bills, she responded coldly. And then she did it. With a quick, almost theatrical movement, she let the watch drop. The sound of metal and glass shattering against the wooden floor echoed like a gunshot. Absolute silence. No one was breathing. I looked at the watch on the floor, the crystal broken into pieces, the face down, and something inside me went out. Grace was the next to speak with laughter. Loud mocking laughter? Oh, Elizabeth, always so dramatic. Couldn't you buy something decent? Something that was actually worthwhile for your son? She covered her mouth with her hand, but her eyes danced with satisfaction. Olivia immediately stood up. Enough is enough. Who the heck do you think you are? Sit down, Olivia. Valerie cut her off. This is a matter between direct family. Don't get involved where you're not wanted. I looked at Matthew. My son, my only son. He was looking at the watch on the floor. His hands were trembling. His breathing was labored. Matthew, I said softly. Say something. He looked up. He looked at me. Then he looked at Valerie. He opened his mouth, and he didn't say anything. 38 seconds. I counted them mentally. 38 seconds of silence while his wife had just destroyed the memory of his great-grandfather, and he said absolutely nothing. I got up from the chair with a calm I didn't know I possessed. I bent down. I carefully picked up the watch from the floor. I wiped it with my napkin. I put it in the pocket of my dress. Then I took out my phone. And there, in front of 22 witnesses, I made the calls that would change everything. My fingers did not tremble when I unlocked the phone. Adrenaline rushed through my veins like liquid fire. But my mind was clear, crystal clear, more awake than I had been in 3 years. I dialed the first number. Mr. Salazar. The manager of the BMW agency where I had bought the car answered on the second ring. Salazar, good evening. This is Elizabeth Montero. Mrs. Elizabeth, what a surprise. Merry Christmas. Same to you. I apologize for calling on Christmas Eve, but I need you to recover a vehicle. A BMW 5 Series 2023 model license plate XYZ 923K. Silence on the other end. Recover. Was there a problem? I am the title holder, and I want you to pick it up tonight, right now if possible. Mrs. Elizabeth. It's Christmas Eve. I will pay you triple the tow truck fee, but I want that vehicle off my property in less than 1 hour. Understood. I'll send the unit immediately. Valerie had stopped smiling. Her face was starting to pale. Wait, what are you doing? I didn't answer her. I dialed the second number. Roger, my accountant, answered with Christmas music in the background. Elizabeth, everything okay? Roger, I need you to log into the system right now. Remove Matthew Monto from all corporate accounts. All of them. Business cards, online banking access, authorized signatures, everything now. Elizabeth, I'm with my family. It's urgent. Please. I heard a sigh, then the sound of footsteps moving away from the noise. Give me 2 minutes. Thank you. Matthew finally reacted. Mom, what are you doing? This is an exaggeration. I looked at him, and in that moment, I didn't see my son. I saw a stranger. Exaggeration? Your wife just threw your great-grandfather's watch on the floor. Your great-grandfather's. And you didn't say anything. I was in shock. I didn't know. You had 38 seconds, Matthew. I counted them. 38 seconds to defend the memory of your family, to defend your mother. And you chose silence. I dialed the third number. Telephone banking. Good evening. This is Elizabeth Mononto speaking. Customer number 4, M78829B. Good evening, Mrs. Montero. How can we help you? I need to freeze 2 additional credit cards on my account, ending in 4C156 and 8M1923. Freeze or cancel? I looked Valerie straight in the eyes. Cancel. You can't do this, Valerie screamed, getting up from the table. Matthew, say something, do something. Understood, madam. The cards will be canceled immediately. Anything else? That is all. Thank you. I hung up. The dining room was in deathly silence. Only the Christmas music continued to play from the living room. Oblivious to the earthquake I had just unleashed, I walked over to where Roderick, my lawyer, was. I had specifically invited him because I knew I would need him. Roderick. He nodded, understanding perfectly what was coming. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. at my office. I'll be there. Perfect. I need to update my will. Valerie's face lost all trace of color. Even her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the pallor that covered her cheeks. No, you can't. I can't. What? I turned towards her. I can't decide what to do with my money, with my assets, with the companies that I built. You're a bitter, manipulative old woman. She spat out the words. All of this is because you've never accepted me, because you can't stand that Matthew loves me more than you. Love you? I let out a dry laugh. Valerie, you don't love Matthew. You never have. That's not true. I took out my phone again. I searched in my voice notes. I found the recording I had made 3 weeks ago. That conversation I had overheard when I came home early. I pressed play. Valerie's voice filled the dining room. I can't take it anymore here. I swear it's unbearable. All the time watching, all the time with her comments. And what does Matthew say? Matthew does what I tell him. I've almost convinced him. In a few months, all of this will be ours. We just have to wait a little more. And what if she leaves you out of the will? Valerie's laughter on the recording was the worst. She's not going to leave her only son with nothing. And when Matthew inherits, I inherit. That's how it works. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was deafening. Matthew looked at me with wide eyes as if he had just woken up from a dream. 3 weeks ago, I came home early from work. Were you at the hardware store? Your wife was on a video call with a friend with the speakerphone on. Valerie tried to compose herself. That's out of context. I was out of context. Olivia interrupted her, who could no longer hold back. What context justifies you saying that you're just waiting for my sister to die to take everything? Grace also stood up. You don't understand anything. Elizabeth has more money than she needs. Why can't she share it with her own family? Because Valerie is not my family, I said firmly. She is an opportunist who saw a chance and took it. I pulled out the folder I had prepared, the one I had hidden in the sideboard drawer days earlier, waiting for the right moment. I opened it in front of everyone. In the last 3 years, I began to read. I have covered expenses of $1,700,000. Everything is documented here. Every restaurant, every trip, every piece of clothing, every piece of jewelry, the BMW, $320,000 in payments. The wedding, $850,000. Credit cards, $410,000. I handed the sheets to Matthew. This is what your wife has spent. This is what I have paid. While she shows off a luxury life on social media that she cannot afford. Matthew reviewed the papers with trembling hands, page after page. His face went from shock to disbelief to rage. Valerie, is this true? Honey, I can explain. Is it true? She took a step back. Then she looked at her mother, then at me, and then she did the only thing she knew how to do. Cry. It's just that you never tell me no. Whenever I want something, you buy it. I thought it was part of being married to you. Part of being married? Matthew dropped the papers. Spending $1,700,000 is part of being married. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was the tow truck. Valerie ran to the window. She saw the driver get out. How he checked the BMW parked in the driveway. No, not that. Not that car. She ran out into the street in heels, screaming. Some guests peered through the windows. Others preferred to look away, uncomfortable. I stayed in my place watching. Matthew slumped into his chair, his head in his hands. Who are you? He whispered. Who are you really? And I, with the broken watch still in my pocket, replied, I am the woman who just recovered her dignity. Outside, Valerie was screaming as the tow truck lifted the BMW, and I felt for the first time in 3 years that I could breathe. The tow truck took the BMW away at 11:15 p.m. Valerie came back into the house barefoot. She had broken a heel running down the street. Her perfect makeup was now a disaster of smudged mascara and stained lipstick. You're a witch, she spat the words at me. A bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy. Valerie, enough is enough, Matthew said in a tired voice. Enough is enough. You stop it. You're a coward. You should have defended me. You should have put her in her place. Defended you from what? From the truth. She looked at him with contempt. You're a mama's boy. You always have been. I thought I could change you, but you're pathetic. The words fell like stones. Matthew stood up slowly, and in his gaze, I saw something I hadn't seen in 3 years. Clarity. I think you should go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. There's nothing to talk about. Either you support me or nothing. Valerie, go to sleep. She stomped up the stairs with Grace following her while muttering insults I couldn't quite hear. The guests began to leave. Awkward hugs, whispered words of support. You did the right thing, my friend Linda told me as she left. That woman deserved this and more, my cousin Frank added. Olivia was the last to leave. Do you want me to stay? No, I need to process this alone. Are you sure? I nodded. She hugged me tightly. I love you, sister, and I'm proud of you. When everyone left, I collected the dishes, put away the food, and cleaned the table. Matthew helped me in silence. We didn't talk. We just worked side by side as we used to do when he was a child. At 1 a.m., we finally sat down in the kitchen with hot coffee. I'm sorry, Mom. What are you sorry for? For everything? For not seeing you? For not listening to you? For letting them disrespect you in your own house? His eyes were red, swollen. Matthew, no. Let me speak, please. He took a deep breath. I knew deep down something wasn't right. But it was easier to ignore it. It was easier to blame you and then to face the truth. And what is the truth? That I married someone I don't know, that I let myself be blinded by I don't know. By her beauty, by the way she made me feel important, by the life she projected on social media. Social media is not real life, son. I know. Now I know. He took a sip of coffee. When I saw those figures, $1,700,000, I had no idea. I thought we were spending normally. I thought we were sharing expenses. She lied to you. She manipulated you. The correction was important. And I let her because it was easier not to ask questions. I placed my hand on his. Love is not comfortable, Matthew. True love challenges you. It makes you better. It doesn't empty you. He cried then, as I hadn't seen him cry since his father's death, and I cried with him. The following days were controlled chaos. The morning of the 25th, Valerie came down for breakfast as if nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said with a forced smile. Matthew and I were sitting at the table. "Good morning," he replied curtly. She poured herself coffee. She opened the refrigerator. She took out her usual imported Greek yogurt. Then she took out her phone. She tried to order an Uber. "Why isn't my payment method working?" Silence. "Matthew, your card isn't working either. There are no more cards, Valerie." "What?" My mom candled them. "Didn't you hear last night?" I saw panic cross her face. She went into her banking app. She checked. She checked again. And how am I supposed to get around? Public transportation. I suggested taking my coffee like millions of people in the city. She glared at me. That afternoon, Valerie went out with her friends. Or at least she tried. They picked her up in a car. They went to a restaurant at the Grove, one of those places with tiny plates and ridiculous prices. But when the check came, her card was declined. "It must be a mistake," she said nervously. "Try this other one." Declined again. One of her friends had to pay with a tight smile and a, "Don't worry, that sounded anything but." Danielle told me later she found out because Valerie's friend uploaded a story to Instagram. A photo of the receipt with the text, "When you invite someone out to eat and your friend forgot her wallet." Valerie lost 200,000 followers that day. On December 26th, she tried to go shopping. She had seen a dress in an exclusive boutique days before. She had it set aside. $7,000. When she arrived to pick it up, all her cards were declined. "I'm sorry, madam. If you can't pay today, we'll have to put it back on the sales floor." The humiliation was public. There were other customers. They recognized her from Instagram. The murmurs began immediately. She came home furious that night. "This is abuse. Financial abuse. I can sue you." "Sue me?" I replied without looking up from my book. "What money are you going to pay the lawyer with?" "I don't know." Matthew was in his room. He didn't come down to defend her. On the 27th, Grace tried to mediate. "Elizabeth, let's be reasonable. You're a family. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone or just your daughter?" Valerie is young. She's impulsive, but she loves Matthew. Valerie loves what Matthew can give her. There's a difference. You are very harsh, and you are opportunistic. Grace was offended. She stomped up to her room like a spoiled child. That night, I heard Valerie and her mother arguing. "The walls of my house are thick, but their screams cut through everything. You promised me this was going to work, and it would work if you weren't so stupid. I told you not to provoke her. She provokes me with her attitude. Now, what are we going to do? We don't have any money." "Interesting. We don't have plural." On the 28th, I observed something revealing. Valerie began deleting photos from Instagram, the ones of the BMW, the ones of expensive restaurants, the ones of the boutiques. Her carefully curated aesthetic began to crumble, and her followers noticed. "No more luxuries. What happened to the car? You look different lately." Each comment was a small wound to her inflated ego. On the 29th, Matthew and I went to the hardware stores, all three. We checked inventory. We reviewed accounts. We talked to employees. Rose, my trusted manager, pulled me aside. "Mrs. Elizabeth, I'm glad to see you here, and I'm even happier to see young Matthew actually working." "What do you mean?" "Well, before he barely came in, and when he did, it was more to give orders than to work." Matthew listened from a distance. I saw how much it hurt him. That night during dinner, he asked me, Can I start over at the hardware stores? Learn from the bottom up like I should have done from the beginning." My heart swelled. I'd love that, son. Valerie came down just at that moment, from the bottom up. "Are you crazy? You're the owner's son." "Exactly." Matthew said, "I'm the son, not the owner, and I need to earn that spot." "This is ridiculous. Your mom is brainwashing you." "My mom is opening my eyes." She let out a hysterical laugh. "You know what? Do whatever you want. I'm leaving." "Where to?" "Anywhere. Away from this madhouse." She went upstairs. She packed a suitcase. She came down with Grace following her. "We're going to a hotel." "With what money?" I asked. She stopped. Her face fell as she remembered that she didn't have access to anything. She took out her phone. She called someone. She waited. "Laura, it's Val." "Hey, can you lend me money for a hotel just for a few nights while—" "Hello, Laura." They had hung up on her. She tried another contact and another. No one answered. Finally, humiliated, she went back up the stairs, and I knew with absolute certainty that the fall was just beginning. January arrived with a dry cold that cut the skin. Valerie and Grace were still in my house, not because they wanted to, but because they had no alternative. The silence between us was dense. We ate at different times. They stayed locked in their room most of the day. I continued with my routine as if they didn't exist, and it worked. Matthew had started working at the Mesa hardware store, the oldest, smallest location where my grandfather had started everything. "I want to learn from where you learned, Mom," he had told me. I put him to work loading boxes, serving customers, sweeping the warehouse, taking inventory. He left every day at 6 a.m. He came back at 7 p.m., exhausted with dirty hands with his clothes stained with dust and paint. Valerie would see him arrive and wrinkle her nose. "I can't believe you've stooped to this." "I didn't stoop. I elevated myself," he would reply before going to shower. One afternoon in mid-January, Valerie came down with a proposal. "I need to talk to you, Elizabeth." It was the first time she had called me by my name without the Mrs. in front of it. "Interesting. Speak." "Look, I know things went wrong and I admit I made a mistake." I raised an eyebrow. "Valerie admitting a mistake, but we can't continue like this. This is not sustainable. I propose we make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "You give me a monthly allowance. Not much, say $30,000, and I promise not to spend on unnecessary things. I'll be more responsible." I looked at her intently. "And what do I gain from that deal?" "Peace, a united family, and I'll try to be a better daughter-in-law." I smiled, not with kindness, with pity. "Valerie, do you really think your problem can be solved with money? Everything is solved with money. There is your mistake. Money doesn't buy character. It doesn't buy humility. It doesn't buy true love. Then what do you want from me?" "Nothing." "I want nothing from you." She stood there processing my words. "And I'm supposed to live without anything, like a beggar. You're supposed to live like most people, working, earning your own money. I work. I have my Instagram. Instagram is not work when your followers were bought and your sponsorships are lies." Her face turned red. "How do you know that?" "Because I investigated 3 years ago and it was all fake like you." She stormed out of the kitchen. 2 days later, I found Valerie crying in the living room. Not manipulative tears this time. Real tears. "It's over," she murmured, looking at her phone. "What's over?" "Everything. I've been canceled on social media. Someone uploaded a video of when my cards were rejected at the restaurant. Another one of the boutique. Someone else talked about the tow truck taking the BMW on Christmas Eve. She showed me her phone. The comments were merciless. Fraud. She was living off her mother-in-law's money. Fake influencer. How pathetic. I've already lost 200,000 followers. She sobbed. Brands are blocking me. No one wants to work with me, and that hurts you more than having hurt the people who opened their home to you. She looked at me with reined eyes. You don't understand. This was my life, my identity. Who am I without this? That is exactly the question you should have asked yourself 3 years ago. I sat down next to her. Not close, but not far either. Valerie, do you know the difference between you and me? That you're rich and I'm not? No. That I built something real, something with my hands, something that survives beyond likes and followers. I built something too. You built an illusion, and illusions always crumble. She wiped her tears angrily. And now what? Are you gonna kick me out? No. You can stay as long as you need to, but on one condition. Which one? That you get a job, a real job. And that you start paying your share of the expenses for this house. A job? Me doing what? Anything. Waitress, salesperson, receptionist, whatever you find. That's it. It's humiliating. No. Humiliating is living off someone else's effort for 3 years, pretending you earned it yourself. She got up from the sofa and walked up the stairs. But something had changed in her posture. Something small. Almost imperceptible. A week later, Valerie got a job at a clothing store in a mall. Salary $8,000 a month. She came home the first day with swollen feet, bruised pride, and an expression I had never seen on her. Humility. It was awful, she told Matthew during dinner. People are rude, my feet hurt, and the manager treats me like I'm stupid. Welcome to the real world, he replied while serving rice. Aren't you going to comfort me? Why? My mom did this for 30 years. I'm doing it now. It's part of life. Valerie looked at me, expecting me to say something, to defend her, to pity her. I didn't. February brought deeper changes. Grace announced that she would return to Houston. Her pension had arrived, and she had found a cheap room to rent. I can't stand this tension anymore, she told me the day she left. But I hope you know that you ruined my daughter's marriage. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped holding up a lie. She left without saying goodbye. Valerie was left more alone, quieter, more present. She started doing things she had never done, washing her dishes, cleaning her room, buying her own thing with her own money. One afternoon, I found her in the kitchen trying to cook. What are you doing, pasta? Well, trying. I don't know if it turned out well. I tried a bite. It was bland, but it was edible. It's fine for your first time. Something like a smile crossed her face. My mom never taught me to cook. We always ordered food or went out to eat. It's never too late to learn. Those were the first kind words I had addressed to her in months. March brought the conversation we had all been avoiding. Matthew and Valerie talked alone for hours. When they came out of the room, both of their eyes were red. Mom, Matthew said. Valerie and I decided to separate. I didn't feel triumph. I felt relief. Are you sure? Yes, Valerie replied. Her voice was different, more mature. I married Matthew for the wrong reasons, and he deserves someone who loves him for who he is, not for what he has. And what will you do? I'm going to move in with a coworker. We'll share expenses. And I'm going to rebuild myself, the real person I should have been from the beginning. 2 weeks later, Valerie moved out. There was no drama, no screaming, just awkward hugs and words of farewell that sounded like silent apologies. When her Uber drove away, Matthew and I stood in the driveway. How do you feel, son? Free. Sad, but free. Is that good? It is. Yes, freedom always hurts at first, but then it's the best thing that can happen to us. 6 months passed. Matthew continued working at the hardware stores. He was now the manager of the Mesa location. He had earned the respect of the employees, the respect of the customers, and self-respect. I had started traveling, small trips with Olivia and my friends to Charleston to Santa Fe, to places I always wanted to see, but never had the time for. And one afternoon in September, Matthew showed up at my house with something in his hands, the watch. I had it repaired, Mom. New crystal, complete cleaning. They even serviced the mechanism. I opened it. It worked perfectly. The constant tick-tock filled the silence. "I've been wearing it every day," he said with a trembling voice. "To remember, to never forget what I lost when I stopped valuing what I had." Tears streamed down my face. Can I keep it?" "It's already yours, son." It always was. We hugged, and in that embrace, 3 years of pain healed. One Sunday in October, Matthew and I resumed our tradition. Breakfast at home, ranch-style eggs, sweet rolls from Donjo's Bakery, hot coffee brewed the way my grandmother taught me. "Do you know what the most ironic thing of all is?" he said to me while spreading butter on a sweet roll. "Valerie taught me something important without meaning to." "What's that?" "That true love does not ask you to give up who you are. It helps you become the best version of yourself." I smiled. "That's an expensive lesson, son. $1,700,000 expensive." He laughed, a genuine laugh that I hadn't heard since before his wedding. But it was worth every dollar because it brought me back home, back to myself. That afternoon, while we were reviewing the hardware store books in my office, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Danielle. "Aunt, look at this." It was a screenshot of Instagram, Valerie's profile. It was no longer a luxury influencer account. Now, it was called Valerie, in reconstruction. The profile picture showed her without makeup, hair tied back, a shy but real smile. And her last post read, "A year ago, I lost everything. My credibility, my marriage, my false identity. It was the best thing that could have happened to me. Today, I work in retail. I earn little. I live in a small apartment. And for the first time in my life, I sleep peacefully because what I have is mine. I earned it myself, and no one can take it away from me." To all who are still looking for fake glamour, this is not that space. But if you are looking for honesty and real growth, welcome. We are learning together. It had 3,000 likes, and the comments were surprisingly positive. This is what I needed to see. Thank you for your honesty. Truly inspiring. I showed the phone to Matthew. He read it in silence. Then he nodded. "I'm happy for her, truly." "Do you miss her?" "I miss what I thought she was, but I don't miss the lie." He closed the accounting book and looked directly at me. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. Tell me. Forgive me for everything, for making you feel like you weren't enough, for letting them disrespect you, for choosing a fantasy over reality." I took his hand. "I already forgave you, son, the day you picked up that watch from the floor and decided to repair it. But I need you to hear it from my lips. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. And if I could go back in time, we can't go back in time. We can only honor it by doing things better from now on." He cried then, tears of liberation, of healing, and I cried with him, not out of pain this time, out of hope. November brought an unexpected surprise. Rose called me one Tuesday afternoon. "Mrs. Elizabeth, there is someone here asking for you." "Who?" "She says it's Valerie." My heart skipped a beat. When I arrived at the Scottsdale hardware store, I found her waiting in the reception area. She looked different. No excessive makeup, simple clothes, jeans, and a white blouse, comfortable shoes. But the most different thing was her expression. There was no more arrogance, just nervousness. "Elizabeth, thank you for seeing me. What do you need?" She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize to you. I know I have no right. I know there are no words that can erase what I did, but I needed to tell you in person." I waited in silence. "I was terrible to you. I treated you like an ATM. as if your only purpose was to finance my fantasy life. And the worst thing is that I convinced Matthew that you were the problem when it was always me." Her voice cracked. "I threw your grandfather's watch on the floor. I destroyed something invaluable, and I can't give it back to you. I can't fix that moment. Matthew fixed it. The watch works perfectly." He did. A tear rolled down her cheek. "I'm glad. But I know there are things that cannot be fixed. Why did you come, Valerie? What do you really want?" "Nothing. I don't want anything. I just needed to look you in the eyes and tell you that you were right about everything, and that if I could go back in time, I would do everything differently." We stood there in the middle of the hardware store that my grandfather built with his hands. "Do you know what I learned in these months?" She said to me, "That respect is not demanded. It is earned. That dignity doesn't come from what you have, but from who you are. And that true love is not what you can take from someone, but what you are willing to give without expecting anything in return. Those are important lessons. I learned them from you watching you even though I never wanted to see you." She sighed. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that your words, your example saved my life because I was dying inside pretending to be someone I wasn't." I looked at her. I really looked at her for the first time without prejudice or pain. And I saw a young woman who had made terrible mistakes, but who was trying to make peace with herself. "I forgive you, Valerie." Her eyes opened in surprise. "You do?" "I do, because holding a grudge only harms me, and I've already wasted enough energy on this situation." Thank you, Elizabeth." She turned to leave, then she stopped. "One last thing. Matthew is a good man, and when he finds someone who truly deserves him, he will be very happy. I was never that person, but I'm learning to be better for myself. That's all that matters." She walked out of the hardware store. I watched her walk away down the street, lighter, more real. And I felt lighter, too. December arrived again, a year after that Christmas that changed everything. This time I organized a small dinner. Just Olivia, her family, and Matthew. When we sat down at the table, I raised my glass. "I want to make a toast," I said, "to second chances, to recovered dignity, and to learning that the most important love is self-love." "Cheers," everyone said. Matthew pulled something out of his pocket. "The watch. Mom, I want to give this back to you." "Why? It's yours." "I know, but I want you to keep it until I have children, until I can pass it on to someone as the man my great-grandfather would have wanted me to be. I'm still learning. I'm still growing." My heart expanded in my chest. "Are you sure?" "Completely, and when the time comes, I'll hand it over with the same letter you wrote me. Because those words saved me." I took the watch in my hands. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound of 4 generations, soon to be 5 on that night. After everyone left, I sat on the porch with a cup of hot chocolate. The Christmas lights blinked softly. The city breathed with that special rhythm that only December has. And I thought about everything I had been through. The pain, the betrayal, the humiliation. But also the strength I found when I thought I had nothing left. The dignity I recovered when I set boundaries. The peace I felt when I stopped chasing the love of those who didn't know how to value it. I took the watch out of my pocket. I opened it. The photo of my grandparents smiled at me from inside. "I did it," I whispered. "I survived. And more than that, I flourished. Because that is the truth I learned the hard way. You can give everything for love. You can sacrifice. You can be generous until you are exhausted, but you must never ever allow them to take your dignity. Because true wealth is not in what you possess. It is in what you do not allow them to take from you." And I had recovered the most valuable thing, my self-respect. I closed the watch. The tick-tock echoed in the silent night. And I smiled because finally, after so much time, I was at peace. And you who are listening to me wherever you are, have you ever had to set boundaries when everyone expected you to keep giving everything? Have you had to choose your dignity over the love of someone who didn't value you? Leave me your answer in the comments. Tell me your story and write what country you are listening from. Because these stories are not just mine, they are ours. And by sharing them, we remind each other that we are not alone, that we are stronger than we think, and that it is never too late to recover what belongs to us. Give a like if this story touched your heart. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more real-life stories because as long as there are women willing to get up after falling, there will always be hope. Until the next story. And remember, your dignity is not negotiable.